In making my Homestuck Was Good actually video essay, I discovered I needed to split off the recap into its own video because of how long it was. Here it is, the ultimate Homestuck recap. From Act 1 to Homestuck Squared. Let's make it happen. One note before we begin. Homestuck contains time travel, alternate timelines, clones, and multiple universes. And there are many characters which use different pronouns and identify differently depending on the time and place. Notably, even Andrew Hussey, the creator, goes by any/all pronouns now, but their comic self-insert exclusively used he/him. I think the most tactful way to handle all of this is to simply use the pronouns each character, including their self-insert, used at the time and place in which I'm discussing them in a documentarian fashion to avoid confusion. I hope you understand. Now let's go! Act 1. A young man stands in his bedroom. It just so happens that today, the 13th of April 2009, is this young man's birthday. Though it was 13 years ago he was given life, it is only today he will be given a name. Okay, I might need to go through this faster. John's a kid who is testing out his Sylladex meta-inventory system in his home as he awaits the arrival of the acclaimed video game beta Spurb. The operating system of the Sylladex is called the Fetch Modus, and the Sylladex is divided into captcha cards, which can hold real-world items. He frequently messages his friends Rose, Dave, and Jade on the Pester Chum chat client as he is excited to play Spurb with them. We see that John's dad has covered the house in clowns, harlequins, and jesters, and John resents it. When John sees that his packages have arrived but that his dad is too busy to give them up right away, he feels homestuck. John then gets into a one-sided fight with his dad before absconding with his copy of Spurb and a birthday present from Dave in the form of a stuffed rabbit from his favorite movie, Con Air. He then launches the game as a client player with Rose acting as his server player. Rose starts making alterations to reality from her computer, most notably installing strange machines like the Cruxtruder, Totem Lathe, and Alchemitor. When John opens the Cruxtruder, a sprite emerges from it, and he merges it, or prototypes it, with his maimed Harlequin doll. The Cruxtruder begins a countdown, and John notices a meteor heading for his house. Rose's internet connection is severed from a storm, taking her offline. We see some of her interests like knitting and Lovecraftian literature, but she manages to find a connection and resume the game. They figure out the sequence of how to use the machines and produce the artifact needed to enter the game, right before the meteor impacts. Act 2. Rose starts writing haughty guides on game facts for Spurb, while John finds his entire home is now in this otherworldly game realm. John's dad is missing, and a wayward vagabond, or WV, is shown to have found a console he can use to contact John. Meanwhile, Dave is introduced. He is cool and a fan of Ben Stiller, but ironically or something? He spills apple juice on his Spurb discs, and when trying to put them out to dry, a bird tries to take them. Due to a fumble with his complex fetch modus, Dave impales the bird with a sword. Rose explores her home, where we see that she and her mom are constantly in a passive-aggressive feud. When she confronts her mom, she makes an empty suicide threat. John fights monsters in the game while Rose goes into the tomb of her dead cat to try to find a better signal. We see that John prototyped the Harlequin sprite with his Nana's ashes, turning it into Nana Sprite. Resurrected and given knowledge of the game, she tells how the game of Spurb is centered around a cosmic game of chess between kingdoms of light and dark. We also learn that the underlings John has been fighting have taken on attributes of anything prototyped prior to entering the game, which is why they are all dressed as Harlequins. Nana Sprite makes John cookies even though he hates Betty Crocker products. Dave knows the small meteors are crashing all around where he lives and prepares himself to confront his bro. He's clearly disturbed by his bro's pseudo-sexual puppet collection, though he hides it behind irony and has a fondness for one puppet called Lil Cal. John, with Rose's help, fights monsters and learns to build upwards to progress. John then begins using the Punch Designix to learn how alchemy and Spurb can be used to craft unique and powerful items. Dave then works up the nerve to confront his bro on the roof of his apartment. Meanwhile, we learn more about WV, who attempts to learn the customs of humanity. He makes a diorama of Cans that he calls Cantown and claims to have been elected by the Cans as their mayor. He also likes eating green things like crayons, a plant, and a chunk of uranium. He has a deep hatred of monarchy and idolizes democracy. And through his PTSD-fueled art, we can see that he is an exile of the chess people, Carapatians. He messes with the controls of the terminals within his pod and discovers that he's happened across some Spurb tech. The mayor is launched with the pod in a trajectory towards another exile, and we have a glimpse of all the known characters so far struggling to get the game started. Act 3. We meet Jade, a narcoleptic horticulturalist enthusiast in an opulent estate on an island in the Pacific Ocean. She also seems to have some strange ability to predict the future. Meanwhile, Dave and his bro have a literal fight, where bro wrecks Dave with a puppet, while John gets wrecked by some ogre underlings. Rose finds a tunnel under the cat's tomb, and the exile Peregrine Mendicant, or PM, is introduced as a protector of mail. Jade gets trolled by an internet troll. Beneath Rose's home is a Skynet laboratory, and she finds a global map of predicted meteor impact sites. Jade arms herself for a confrontation with her grandpa, but during the fight, we see that it's all pretend. He died a long time ago, and she's just pretending he's still around. Rose uses Skynet equipment and sees what appears to be a recording of her younger self talking to her cat Jaspers. Young Rose was playing therapy with him when he supposedly told her his greatest secret before vanishing right before her eyes, only to turn up dead on a beach weeks later. Back in the present, John defeats the ogres and enters his dad's room, only to discover that he was just an ordinary businessman. John had only been projecting an interest in hijinks and harlequins onto him. Meanwhile, his dad escapes confinement in the dark kingdom of Durst. The ARC agent, Jack Noir, watches his escape through his CCTV-like fenestrated walls, muttering about the enforced Harlequin dress code. Jade confronts her actual guardian, her pet dog Beckwhirl. She plays fetch with him with bullets, as we see that he is not just any dog, but a sort of deity in dog form that cares for Jade. By this point, the meteor showers have mixed with the storm to create a deadly wildfire around Rose's home. She talks to John, who only now realizes upon seeing how normal his dad is, that he had defaced his posters with clowns long ago as a result of some suppressed trauma. His dad was just trying to bond with his interest in clowns. Jade uses her apparent clairvoyance to deliver packages in the far future, using the mayor and Spurb sessions. But an aimless renegade, or AR, makes an appearance. Jade uses a robot so that her dream self can interact with the waking world, but it turns out that dream selves also literally exist within the game. Hers is in the Light Kingdom, Prospit, which orbits a great sphere of sky called Skya. John alchemizes a bunch of stuff. Dream Jade looks into the clouds of Skya, depicting events of the past, future, and elsewhere, and we see not only how she knows so much, but also the arrival of Beck and the early formation of the Earth. We then see some flashbacks where Rose and Dave were trolled online by some trolls, claiming to be time travelers and rappers. PM uses the Spurb station to send Jade's package backwards in time. Jade's younger self received the late, or early, birthday present from John, which ironically turned out to be the impetus for her reaching out to them online. Meanwhile, Dad destroys Jack's mandated silly hat, and for that, Jack begrudgingly allows him to leave his thanks. Finally, with the required materials to start the game, Rose launches Spurb as the client, with Dave as her server player. The wildfire proceeds to burn the house down. In the commotion, the artifact needed to start the game falls down a waterfall and Rose leaps for her life to catch it. Dave prototypes an eldritch princess doll and Jasper's the dead cat, and Jasper's sprite saves Rose from falling to her death. Meanwhile, Jade obtains a copy of the game, and John fights his way to the top of his house tower to a transportation gate, where we see that this is just one planet. Intermission. A man that looks like Jack but is instead called Spade Slick is part of a gang called the Midnight Crew, with a theme on card suits, attacking their rival gang, the Felt, themed around pool balls in the Felt Mansion. The Midnight Crew consists of Slick, Diamond's Droog, or DD, Heart's Boxcars, or HB, and Club's Deuce, or CD. As they make their way through the mansion, we see that each of the Felt have specific time powers that make it difficult to just outright kill them. Doze can alter time to slow-mo for himself. Itchy does the opposite for super speed. Dai can jump to alternate timelines with a voodoo doll where each timeline is defined by the death of a given target. When he tries this on Slick though, he's brought to an alien wasteland. Slick literally made this town. Biscuits has an oven that moves forward in time. Eggs has a timer that goes backwards. Trace can follow your past trail, Finn can follow your future trail. Stitch patches his teammates from a distance. Slick uses Dai's voodoo doll to jump to a timeline where Crowbar is still alive, who organizes the Felt. Snowman's presence brings an immediate ceasefire, for if she dies, she takes the universe with her. Snowman takes Slick's eye, and he responds by attacking Sawbug, who transports them to a random time period upon being wounded. Slick kills the alternate crowbar while his past self watches from when he was in exile, followed by 2 sawbucks. Dee Dee then coerces Stitch to repair them. They attack the horde of eggs and biscuits that were hounding HB, and Slick uses Crowbar's crowbar, which nullifies other time artifacts. Clover, the lucky member of the Felt, warns Slick to not use the crowbar in the time vault, when Cans punches Dee Dee literally into next week. He then punches HB out of the calendar entirely into a horse calendar. Does this mean HB is trapped in a horse dimension? Slick uses the crowbar anyway. With the time vault's powers nullified, Slick is transported to an alternate timeline where he and Snowman are the only survivors of the conflict. She tries to stop him and take his arm to prevent him from using the barcode on his carapacian wrist, to no avail. Slick enters the bunker and finds a spurb station, a terminal, and an alien kid. Act 4. John's planet is the Land of Wind and Shade, or Lowas. AR sees the symbol of Beck on the mayor's pumpkin and surrenders immediately. John talks to one of the trolls, who turns out to also be playing Spurb. Dave launches Spurb with Jade as his server player. Rose's planet is the Land of Light and Rain, or Lolar. John explores Lowas and meets the natives there, salamander consorts, who are also aggrieved by the attacking underlings, who apparently work for some denizen in the planet's core. The exiles of the future commiserate over a campfire. John gets in a fight he can't handle, but Jade's grandpa comes to the rescue, somehow alive. John tries to put out a wildfire using shaving cream, but who knew shaving cream was so flammable? More trolls harass the players, but they are even more insistent that they are unstuck from time in a strange way. PM, in the present, visits Durst despite being a courier for the rival kingdom to fulfill a mail request. Jack makes her a deal. He will return Jade's lost birthday present to John from confiscation to PM, but only if she brings the crowns of the Prospitian monarchs. She agrees, and Jack looks in the box. Dave and Jade make many modifications to their alchemy to arm up on a bunch of stuff. The trolls begin to sift into preferred targets. Rose spars with hers in a game of wit. Dave does rap battles with his. Jade hates hers, and John doesn't know what to do with his. It's clear at this point that these aren't simply internet trolls, they're the aliens. PM speaks to the White Queen, or WQ, and explains the situation with the mail. Knowing the fight is hopeless, she hands over her crown and ring. In the future, WQ is in exile and proclaims that PM should be the new queen. Jade tells Rose how each player has a dream self. Jade prototyped Dave's sprite with the impaled bird, who made a nest on the radio tower that Dave has to climb. John's patron troll then tricks him into using a jetpack to skip to the boss, bypassing his quest. We skip ahead to Dave's planet, the Land of Heat and Clockwork, or Lohak, where we see an armed Dave skillfully dispatch underlings with time powers of his own, aided by a maniacal cow sprite. Dave speaks to Rose, and we learn that John was killed by his denizen, and Jade never entered the game. They come up with a plan to go back in time and fix the timeline. Dave travels back, leaving Rose behind. He warns John not to go, and he prototypes himself into the sprite instead of Lil Cow. His past self now has Dave's sprite, an alternate future self, to ask for aid. However, Rose's memories from the defunct timeline seep into her through her dreams and dream self. She also discovers that she too defaced her walls, but with Jasper's secret. Meow. John is trolled by another troll, who is shown to be going backwards in time from John's perspective, leading to a lot of frustration. He tells them they are supposed to kill the Black King, or BK, but that they mess up and have no chance of winning the game anymore. We see the Black Queen, or BQ, teasing and demanding that Jack update his attire to the new dress code of Eldritch Princess Sword Cat Bird Harlequin outfits. Jack uses the weapon in the birthday package to murder BQ, taking her ring for himself. No longer did he need to wear a silly outfit, tentacles and wings grew out of him as he took on the prototypings directly like she had. John finally receives his present from Rose, a sewn plush rabbit. Dream Rose helps Dream Dave realize he's awake. John advances further into the game, arriving in the Veil, the ring of meteors on the edge of the game session, and the Courtyard Droll, or CD, pickpockets the Queen's ring from PM, though Dream Jade takes it back. With 3 players in the game, the battlefield in the center of Skya develops into a full-fledged war between light and dark. A present WV tires of the bloodshed and makes a plea to the 2 armies to unite against the tyrannical Black King, who forces them to fight. PM convinces the White King, or WK, to hand over his crown and staff, but Jack slays BK himself. Rose finally alchemizes her own arsenal, but she uses her Lovecraftian interest to imbue them with eldritch power. Dave follows, using his future self's inventory to enhance his equipment further. John watches a terminal in the lab in the Vale that shows him how his Nana died by a meteor at a Betty Crocker factory. John starts using the machines to identify the guardians of all of his friends. They produce ectobiological goo of Nana, Mom, Bro, and Grandpa, and from it they produce cloned babies of all of them, plus the players. AR sees another terminal, where he witnesses a baby Nana being raised by the infamous Colonel Sassacre, only to be shot by the baby's flintlock pistol. When John sees the 8 babies before him and the 2 plush bunnies in his possession, he seizes the opportunity to reenact his favorite scene from Con Air and give the babies the bunnies and whatever else he has. Meanwhile, the trolls shift a bit as they find their favorite humans to troll. The blind trickster chooses Dave, the bad rapper chooses Jade, the snooty one keeps with Rose, and the angry one hounds John. We then finally see how exactly Dave entered the game, with his bro cleaving a meteor in half to protect him. Back in the present, Jack, high on power, massacres the United Armies and starts a genocide, followed by using the Queen Ring's ultimate power, the Red Miles. John sends the babies onto their respective meteors as Jack uses WK's staff to begin the Reckoning. Meanwhile, the Draconian Dignitary, or DD, uses similar equipment to clone Grandpa's old dog, Harley, and, using Rose's journaled subliminal meow code, creates the baby Beck. Jack sends his Red Miles towards Prospect to destroy the kingdom he loathed, and then he leaves to face Bro in a duel. Prospect's moon plummets down to the battlefield, and Dream Jade desperately tries to wake Dream John to no avail. She sacrifices herself, throwing him out of the way to save him. The Reckoning triggers the meteors of the Vale to Skya, which redirects them to Earth, pelting it with meteors. Rose stores her Spurb Guide in an Eldritch server floating out in the void somewhere. WV escapes to Earth, becoming an exile. PM kills the Hegemonic Brute, or HB. She calls Jack and gives him the crowns. Jack honors the deal and hands over the package. Dream John mourns the death of Dream Jade as PM delivers the package to him. He reads a message from the weapon's creator, Jade's pen pal, and Grandpa collects Jade's dream corpse, mounting and stuffing it, per tradition, and returning back to the past. The mayor reveals that he never let go of WQ's ring and still has it. There is still hope. Act 5, Act 1, Hivebent. We see the alien planet, Alternia, with its 2 moons. We meet a young troll named Karkat, who hopes to one day be a Thresh-Executioner and a hacker. This is the Angry Troll, and he's friends with a Juggalo troll named Gamzee. His beliefs on this world are an orthodox religion, primarily focused in the rejection of science for the sake of miracles. He imbibes in a soporific slime frequently, which helps him stay chill. Karkat tries coding a virus in the Tildath programming language. This language is always cyclical, and Karkat is bad at it. He looks at his hacker friend's code that is supposed to activate upon the destruction of 2 universes as reference. The hacker has found a strange game that he wants them all to play, and they'll be doing it competitively with red and blue teams. We meet Terezi, the blind troll, whose keen senses of smell and taste make up for her lack in sight, and who dreams of being a legislacerator. She argues with her friend to figure out who is going to be the team leader, and we learn trolls have different colors of blood, with Karkat uniquely trying to be anonymous about his. Karkat confronts his guardian, a monster called Crabdad, and then we meet Solix, the hacker troll with psionic abilities. He claims to have visions of doom and knows it's related to this game he's uncovered. He speaks to a nihilistic troll friend of his, who gives him cryptic messages of how they should play the game, even though it will ruin everything. Solix decides not to play, but it is too late, as everyone else is already interested. Karkat begins playing the game, but runs a virus that explodes his computer, killing his Crabdad. The virus is a curse that will supposedly doom all of the troll's guardians over the course of the game. Solix looks over his scripts and finds a strange one he found on a far-off server that is only supposed to summon a time-traveling demon upon the death of the universe. But it's probably fine. He is already here. We meet Tavros, a disabled troll in a wheelchair who dreams to fly and is bullied by a spider-themed troll. As the players start entering the game, their guardian monsters, called Luci, begin to die off. We meet Nepeta, a cat-themed troll who lives in a gnarly cave and loves role-playing. She's in a relationship with a strong troll who insists that she join the blue team. We then see a flashback where the spider troll, Aradia, Tavros, and Solix were playing an augmented reality game called Flarp. The spider troll uses psychic powers to force Tavros off a cliff, making him break his legs and become disabled. Aradia, aided by the voices of the dead, uses telekinesis to prototype her sprite with a frog head statue, knowing it will be critical to beating the game. Aradia had been dead all along, with only her extreme psychic abilities keeping her spirit alive, and it is only after she enters the game and prototypes her frog sprite once more with herself that Aradia's sprite can be seen. We then meet Vriska, the spider troll. She's missing an eye and arm from previous flarping and is obsessed with winning despite a trend of bad luck. We meet Equius, the strong troll, who spends his free time making robots to fight. Equius is a believer of the Homestuck, the blood caste system of troll society that insists the redder-blooded trolls are subservient and lesser than the bluer-blooded trolls. He speaks to Gamzee, a purple-blooded troll, and tries to convince him to embrace his racial superiority to no avail. Equius has designed a robotic body for Aradia that looks just like her, but with blue blood that matches his own. We see another flashback following Tavros' injury, where Aradia decides to sick the ghosts of all the trolls Vriska has killed flarping to haunt her. A white text guy urges Vriska to get revenge and continue the cycle of payback. He admits to being omnipotent, but claims to never tell a lie. Vriska mind controls Solix and makes him kill Aradia. The white text guy introduces himself as Doc Scratch, and he is the first Guardian, the deity granted by Spurb onto this world. Teresi contacts him and tells him that Vriska's been cheating by using one of his magic cue balls to gain an edge in flarping, to which he responds in anger, blowing it up in her face, costing her an eye and an arm. Back in the present, Aradia reveals to Vriska that she will in fact be on the red team, while Equius tries to court Aradia despite his distaste for her blood color. When she enters his robot gift and becomes Aradia Bot, she regains her lost emotions and becomes furious that Equius tried to program it to love him. She rips out her own heart to make it stop, but ends up falling for him anyway. The Jack from this game of Spurb stabs Karkat and discovers that he's a mutant with candy red blood, not even on the Homestuck. Since that is the natural color of Carapacian blood, the two bond and form a plan to overthrow BQ together. Since each troll is prototyping their Luci, she would have been nearly unstoppable, but Aradia had prototyped a frog, a hated symbol in Durst culture. She refuses to wear her ring, and would eventually be exiled and approached by Doc Scratch. The narration then explains how, as the two teams progressed in the game, they discovered that they were in fact all in the same session in one long chain. We meet Kanaya, the snooty troll that fancies fashion and daylight. She has a glitched weapon that switches between chainsaw and lipstick. Kanaya finds that her Lucis, a virgin mother grub, has died, and she extracts her egg, the matriorb, with her chainsaw. Kanaya reads Rose's guide to Spurb that she found in a far-off server. Meanwhile, Vriska purposefully builds Tavros' expanded house with only stairs as a perverse challenge for him to overcome in his wheelchair. Tavros uses a rocket to get around it, as well as using his psychic communion with animals to progress his quest. Vriska, in a pixie dress, sexually harasses him, because of course. Kanaya is heartbroken by this. The narration stops to tell us how troll romance and reproduction work. In their society, they have 4 quadrants that represent positive reproductive love, positive platonic love, negative reproductive love, and negative conciliatory love, called matespritship, more allegiance, kismicitude, and auspisticism respectively. For trolls, sex is vestigial and they are all bisexual. Instead, they try to fill their 4 quadrants. We then meet Eridan and Pfefferi, the sea trolls. Eridan kills a sky whale and gives it to Pfefferi to feed to her Lucis, Glub Glub, a small eldritch god, capable of unleashing a psychic whale that kills entire casts of trolls at a time. Pfefferi and Eridan are moirails, but Eridan wants to be matesprits. Once Pfefferi enters the game, she tries to break up with the sea dweller Supremacist gently, but he does not take it well. Solix did not enter the game in time. Glub Glub lets out a wail as she is killed by a meteor, killing every troll in the universe, aside from the highest caste, Fuchsia Bloods. Fortunately, the trolls discover that kissing the recently deceased lets them take over as their dream self, which functions as an extra life. Solix unlocks some temporal features of the troll's chat client Trollian, allowing Karkat to set up a trans-temporal bulletin board with memos to allow coordination between the past and future, while electing himself leader of all 12 trolls. However, he ends up using it to mostly argue with himself, making the feature nearly useless. Meanwhile, Snowman uses a Spurb Station terminal to tell Terezi to destroy the Queen's Ring to prevent Jack from getting it. The game goes well, but Terezi and Snowman betray Karkat and Jack in a plan to exile all of the agents of Durst with the help of Vriska. We see a flashback that shows us how Vriska responded to losing her eye and arm. She mind controls Tavros, using his communion to control Terezi's Lucis, using her mental bond and a psychic reach around to force Terezi to look at the sun, blinding her. Vriska has disabled 2 of her friends and killed another, but the cycle isn't over. In the present, Aradia Bot confronts Vriska and beats her within an inch of her life before time traveling away. Aradia skips forward to the end of the game. She makes a memo detailing their eventual fate after many, many failed timelines. The trolls face BK, a leviathan prototyped with 12 monsters, one of which is an eldritch god. They finally win the game and try to claim the ultimate reward, but victory is snatched from them at the last possible moment. The trolls retreat to a meteor in the Veil, unable to enter the universe they created. Each of their signs becomes a constellation, surrounding the next planet to play the game in the universe they made, Earth. Act 5, Act 2. From his temporal stratum in a dead game session, Karkat watches John grow up from his terminal, and he is jealous. He goes to the end of his timeline in John's last moments and gives a grand speech about how they are their creators. John says hi. Feeling upstage, Karkat immediately commands the group to troll the humans out of spite. Some of them go along with the plan, but most don't bother. Vriska sees John has made the most progress and decides to become his mentor. She gets him back on the main quest and tells him about trolls. Meanwhile, Rose's power has been growing, and she tells John that their game is unwinnable but to proceed anyway for a way out. Kanaya skips around Rose's timeline to try to troll her, only to find out that she's intrigued by her. Kanaya tells her that she can see that their timeline abruptly ends, starting with Rose. Meanwhile, Dave starts using time loops to manipulate the Lohawk crocodile's stock market. We hear that Equius gives Tavros robot legs to walk. John shows Vriska the final scene of Con Air, and she develops a crush on Nicolas Cage. Noticeably, Vriska has her eye and arm back. Karkat confronts John and Dave with concerns that they're flirting with Vriska and Terezi, but they blow him off. Karkat, as a romantic, advises that John and Dave pair with Rose and Jade, respectively. Nana Sprite makes John comfortable so he can help Jade get into the game. Eridan rants to Rose about how he doesn't think magic is real but wants to learn how it really works, and she responds by magically destroying his computer. Aradiabot, feeling purposeless for the first time in her life, starts to have a mental breakdown. Rose bids farewell to Jasper Sprite. Dave shows Gamzee the insane clown posse, thinking he'd like them, but Gamzee considers it blasphemous to his religion. Dave Sprite advises Dave on the legendary item Kalidwulch before leaving. Jade dreams, but with her dream self dead, what does she dream? Absolute horror. John uses a Bill Cosby laptop as Jade's server player. That's unfortunate. Their previous duel having been interrupted, Jack tracks Bro down for a rematch, and Dave Sprite aids Bro. Jack uses the red miles, setting Loas ablaze. John doesn't know what to prototype into Jade's Sprite and asks Rose for advice, but she already knows what he will do from her communions and doesn't share. She warns him that not prototyping anything at all would immediately fail the game. We see the final, largest meteor about to impact the Earth, above Jade's island. John tries to prototype a doll, but Vriska intervenes, using her psychic abilities to put him to sleep. With no one else around, Beck jumps into the Sprite, prototyping himself. Beck's Sprite blows the meteor out of the sky with a blast so large that it incinerates the entire planet, turning the Earth into a desolate wasteland. Meanwhile, Jack, Bro, and Dave Sprite duel, and Jade manages to finally enter the game. However, as she does so, the Spurb enemies, including Jack, take on the prototyped abilities of the first Guardian. We see a flashback that it was Jack with these godly powers who slaughtered the Aradia bots and blew up the kingdoms in the troll session. This is why they don't win. They made an unbeatable boss. Bro is slain. Dave Sprite is missing. Jack takes Lil Cal as a trophy. In the future, the fourth and final Spurb station appears before the exiles on the post-apocalyptic Earth. John wakes and puts out the green fire using latent wind powers. Jade, in the land of Frost and Frogs, or Lofoth, fights an imp with Beck's godly powers. Meanwhile, Rose tries to convince Dave that the Eldritch gods, called Horror Terrors, aren't evil, and she has a plan to destroy the Green Sun that exists out in the void somewhere, because it is what powers the first Guardians. Tavros tries to be assertive as Vriska told him, but he takes the wrong lessons and uses his communion abilities to create a chain of events that kills Jade's grandpa in the past. Vriska sees what he did and bullies him relentlessly for his failure. She also reveals how she mind-controlled the Durst agents of the Human Session to ensure the creation of Beck because she wants to overcome an unbeatable boss. Tavros finally stands up for himself, saying he will not tolerate her abuse anymore, declaring her an enemy. Vriska tells John to lay in his quest bed to ascend to a higher level. Jack murders him in his sleep as Vriska predicted, but it works. John ascends to the god tier as the heir of breath. We see a flashback where Vriska was dying after a Radiobot beat her. She makes Tavros take her to her quest bed and tries to make him kill her, but he cannot. Eventually, painfully, she ascends to the Thief of Light. So she's been a god tier for a while now too. Back in the present, Eridan tries to gift his legendary rifle to Jade, claiming he has now mastered science wands. A Radiobot approaches Solix, her old partner, and gives him a final hug, before exploding. Jade prototypes Beck Sprite with her stuffed dream self, turning him into Jade Sprite. Meanwhile, the narration then tells us there's a most important character in Homestuck, and apparently it's Gamzee? It's not. Jade Sprite is a complete mess, sobbing and unwilling to risk her life to fight Jack even with god powers, and so Jade collaborates with Karkat instead. AR starts rigging the Spurb stations with explosives. Mare builds a fort and has a PTSD nightmare about Dog Jack, aka Beck Noir, fearing that the ring will make him just like him. We then see a flashback where Jack murders every troll's dream self, but in so doing kills Aradia's comatose dream self on her quest bed, making her ascend as the Maid of Time. She freezes Jack in time, and it turns out the countdown on the meteor we've been seeing is how long until he's free! Back in the present, Tavros confronts Vriska, clearly outmatched, and she gleefully murders him. We're in Murderstuck now! Tavros' corpse hits the ground by Terezi. Meanwhile, Kanaya helps Jade in the part of the main quest where you have to breed the perfect frog. Pfeffery consoles Solix as they bond. Eridan has a science wand now that Kanaya helped him make, and he mentions that he spent most of the game killing angels. He tells Pfeffery that he knows they're no match for Jack, and he asks her to defect to Jack with him. Pfeffery rejects him, and in a fit of incel rage, Eridan uses his hope-destroying powers to knock out Solix, murder Pfeffery, and destroy the Matriorb. Having literally just witnessed Eridan extinct the trolls as a species, Kanaya comes at him, only for him to murder her too, and leave. In a panic, Karkat messages Gamzee, who reveals he has run out of slime, going sober for the first time in ages. Embracing his religion and dominant place on the hemo spectrum, he vows to kill every lesser being on the meteor. Karkat tries to warn people in his memos, but no one believes him. Meanwhile, Terezi LARPs an investigation of Tavros' murder. John finds Dad's wallet fetch modus with all of his possessions, and he uses his wind powers to fly Dad's car with the mayor across the battlefield. Karkat apologizes to John for being a jerk. With the troll players dropping the pretense of being a cohesive group, Karkat asks Equius to protect them from the rampaging murderers, to which he agrees. Nepeta asks that he roleplay with her, and he finally does so despite past objections. He asks her to stay safe in the vents as he seeks out the murderers. Equius confronts Gamzee and badly tries to convince him to put his rage to better use, but Gamzee shoots him with an arrow and strangles Equius to death with a bow. Nepeta watches this from the vents and angrily pounces on Gamzee, only for him to beat her to death. Don't cry, don't cry. Vriska confesses her murder to John, who tries his best to understand her, and John begins boring a hole into the battlefield because apparently there's a useful bomb there. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad have a date at a Carapacian castle. Vriska then reads a diary written by her ancestor, Marquise Spinneret Mindfang. It seems she was Kismeses with the ancestor of Eredin, much like Vriska had been with Eredin at one point. And a powerful figure named the Grand High Blood was Gamzee's ancestor. Vriska, Gamzee, and Eredin have a showdown, which is interrupted by a somehow alive Kanaya who chainsaws Eredin in half. Jack murders Mom and Dad with ease, but we learn that he is unable to kill Jade out of loyalty he inherited from Beck. So he orders DD to do it, who orders CD to do it. Aradia's time lock lifts, and Jack in the troll session is freed. We then see our first proper dream bubble, a sort of afterlife gifted by the horror terrors that allows communion with sleeping players. Aradia walks Tavros, Kanaya, Jade, and alternate Aradia bot, and Solix through their memories, where we see similar wall writing codes that made the humans' first guardian. Apparently, in some of the alternate timelines, Gamzee went sober and killed his allies much earlier! Doc Scratch is the troll's first guardian. Doc Scratch is aware of the viewer and invites us into his home, along with a repaired Spade Slick. Doc Scratch speaks with Rose and tells her his philosophy of knowing everything and having fun with it anyway. He appreciates jokes but never lies. He gives her information on the Green Sun and causing a scratch, a hard reset to the game. She has a magic cue ball, but she can't see into it to get answers from it. He advises her to use her seer powers, and the ball tells her to talk to Jade. Jade tells her that her mom died, and Rose becomes distraught. Lost, she asks the cue ball if the horror terrors have led her astray, and they answer through it, taking over her body and corrupting her. Rose has gone grimdark. John retrieves the tumor from inside the battlefield and meets the weapon Jade's pen pal made, the third iteration of the same plush bunny he had, now a robot that he names Liv Tyler. She gives him a legendary hammer. John sends the mayor, Liv, and CD on a mission to deliver the tumor to Durst. But then he heads into the dark eldritch cloud that is Rose seeking revenge on Jack. She meets up with John and they face Jack together, only for Jack to backstab John and kill him. We finish the first disc of Homestuck, but Terezi accidentally scratches the second disc. Gamzee leads a trail of evidence to convince Terezi that Vriska is responsible for all of the murders. We see Mindfang talking about other ancestors, like Terezi's ancestor, Neophyte Redglare, a Legis Lacerator. Clearly many of the trolls we know adopted personality traits from their idol ancestors. Redglare catches Mindfang, but Mindfang mind controls the masses to lynch her and kill his honorable tyranny. She consults with Equius's ancestor, expatriate Darkleer. Mindfang finds a cue ball and asks it how she will die, at the hands of the summoner, Tavros' ancestor. We also learn that there was a sectarian war that resulted in adult trolls being forcibly removed from the home planet Alternia, which would be a sanctuary for young trolls to grow up. Back in the present, Terezi confronts Vriska, but the game is broken from the scratch disc. Doc Scratch, priding himself an excellent host, appears to repair the disc and fill us in on the missing content of the disc. Terezi flips a coin to decide if Vriska will be allowed to leave and fight Jack, risking revealing their location to him. Vriska uses her luck powers to ensure a favorable outcome and leaves. Meanwhile, Jack kills Rose. When Vriska confronts Jack, he blows up the meteor and kills all of her friends before accepting the challenge. However, Terezi has mind powers and could foresee these results of Vriska's choice. She couldn't let it happen and stabs Vriska in the back anyway. We see that god tiers can only die if the death is heroic or just. John's death was a sucker punch, and so he resurrects. Vriska's death was just, and she dies for good. John awakes to see Vriska's final message, where she asked him out on a date? Slick starts hate-kissing Snowman, and Doc Scratch beats Slick down, demanding that he kill her, not love her. Carcat tells John the plan that he made with Jade to start the scratch and reset the game. We see some late-game conversations. In a dream bubble, Vriska, dead, speaks to a John in person. Dave Sprite, maimed but alive, gives a pep talk to Jade Sprite. Jack begins following Jade around, trying to work up the nerve to kill her, while she gets close to cloning the perfect frog. She says that she spoke to her planet's denizen and brokered a deal. Her denizen provides the last frog she needs in exchange for Jade promising to save all of the planets and their inhabitants from being erased in the scratch. Karkat apologizes to everyone in a memo. He rushed the frog breeding in his game, and the supposedly perfect frog, the Genesis frog, which is the human universe, has cancer, making it sterile. They never could have won. Gamzee gets revenge on Dave by using his Chuckle Voodoo powers to manifest a dream plush of a maimed Harlequin in John's dream self's bedroom to set things in motion. We then see that Doc Scratch is currently raising a troll, who makes a real suicide threat as he beats her. He explains the history of the troll's ancestors to both her and us. Karkat's ancestor was the Sufferer, a mutant troll who preached kindness and equality against the fascist state, who would execute him for his heresy. He became a martyr. Troll Jesus. Kanaya's ancestor was the Dolorosa, a woman who cared for him because no Lucis would. Nepida's ancestor was the Disciple, and Solix's ancestor was the Psionic. Feferi's ancestor was her Imperious Condescension, and with her lifespan, she still rules as the Empress of the Troll Empire. Upon hearing of Alternia's destruction, she races in her spaceship back home, but she's too late. Aradia's ancestor landed too late, and Doc Scratch raises her with intent to send back in time. She is the Handmaid, the Grim Reaper who acts on behalf of Doc Scratch's employer, the leader of the Felt, Lord English. The Condess and Handmaid duel upon the ruins of their civilization, and the Condess wins at the cost of becoming English's servant. Hussey then intervenes and shakes down Doc Scratch for hijacking his story. The young Handmaid tries to escape, but English stops her. He is already here! Hussey loads the second disc. All of the surviving trolls have a showdown on top of the meteor, but Karkat manages to calm Gamzee down with shooshpaps and love. Karkat tries to confess his feelings for Jade when CD drops Dad's ton of shaving cream, rigged with explosives. It's very flammable, and kills Jade. Jack is furious and kills CD in blind rage. Cascade. John begins the scratch, fighting off massive underlings in the process. In the Trolls session, Jack eyes the Genesis frog he loathes and unleashes the Red Miles into it to kill the universe. The Exiles see the Miles coming for them and prepare to blow the Spurb stations right after WK arrives. Jack reluctantly puts Jade's body on her quest bed and then hides in a meteor time capsule, awakening on the wasted Earth. He kills WK and WQ on the spot. AR starts detonating the stations to trap him in the universe, but the mayor is still in one. Jack kills AR. Jack can't leave without uranium, but the mayor ate it! He guts the mayor, powers the station, and transports to the Troll session, and we know how that turned out. Rose and Dave, now as their dream selves, float in the void with Liv and the tumor, having just killed DD. They find quest beds in the moon as it drifts and set the bomb to blow. Each side represents a universe being destroyed. Slick confronts Snowman and uses Scratch's pistol to kill her, sinking the 8-ball and the Trolls universe with it. Jade ascends to the god tier, the Witch of Space, but since her dream self is Jade Sprite, she also gets First Guardian powers. Using her space powers, she shrinks the planets one by one. Meanwhile, PM drags the mayor's body as the only survivor of the Exiles and finds that he still has the Queen's ring. The bomb counts down, and Jade enlarges a fenestrated plane. Gamzee asks Doc Scratch what their purpose is. He responds, suckers. The bomb blows, and out of it bursts the green sun. They just brought it into existence. Solix sacrifices himself with psionic powers to take the trolls to it, and PM dons the ring and gains godly powers. Dave and Rose emerge from the explosion, god tiers now, the Knight of Time and Seer of Light. PM stares down Jack and vows revenge, and Jade blasts through the plane, planets in tow, out of the session. The scratch is done. Homestuck will never be bigger than it is now. Intermission 2. The universes are dead. A code runs. Doc Scratch morphs into the hulking form of Lord English. He had always been an excellent host. Act 6, Act 1. The timeline is reset. We have another chance. Earth is back! But instead of John, we have someone else. Jane. On November 11th, 2011. Instead of Jade, we have Jake, who is a fan of all movies. Jane notably has a lot of Betty Crocker branded technology, and is the heiress to inherit Crocker Corp, which undergoes a global rebranding, changing the spoon logo to a trident. An apparent troll that goes by the handle UU encourages Jane to play Spurb, but Jane doesn't believe a lot of what she has to say. Jane has a Crocker Corp tiara top headband that gives her access to the internet. We meet Roxy instead of Rose, who is often drunk and flirty, and she warns Jane about the Batter Witch, a moniker for the supposed truth behind Betty Crocker. Jake is working on the Robo-Bunny Liv, but he has run out of uranium. Jake tries to speak to Dirk instead of Dave, but apparently Dirk has an autoresponder, or AR, an AI stored in his glasses that responds for him. Jane is grounded because there have been assassination attempts upon her, but she confronts the stuffed corpse of her pop-up. So John took Nana's place, and Nana, or Jane, is now the kid, though 16 instead of 13. Jake's island is covered in pumpkins and lucite for some reason. Jane activates another Robo-Bunny gifted to her by Dirk. She names him Lil Sebastian, and we learn that Dirk is immensely interested in implementing layers of irony into his machinations. A sparring robot, Dirkbot, saves Jake from a sea goat Lucis, while Jane tries to retrieve her copy of Spurb from the mailbox, but doing so triggers a bomb. Act 6, Intermission 1. Hussybot illustrates how the Prospitian battleship that Jade and John are on are traveling through the higher dimension in which he resides. Jade explains the trip to the new session will take 3 years. John and Dave Sprite send a farewell to the troll meteor that says they'll meet up in 3 years. The trolls, Rose and Dave, catch up on the situation, and Rose explains that her seer powers can help her navigate the void. Gamzee is in hiding, and Kanaya vows to find him. PM uses her godly powers to teleport the mayor's dying body to the meteor, hoping they can save him. Solix, who uniquely had 2 dream selves and lost one, is now half dead? He stays behind and pushes the meteor off with Aradia, starting their journey. Jack and PM follow in pursuit. Act 6, Act 2. Dream Jane sees visions in Skaya's clouds, but then the session's Jack assassinates her. We learn that BQ has been cooed and the agents are more proactive this time around. CD says how he killed Dream Jake by taking advantage of his deadly peanut allergy. Dream Jane's corpse emits some lifey powers, but Jane wakes up. Godcat, the first guardian of this Earth, seems to have saved this version of her. Jane entertains the idea that maybe Spurb is otherworldly, and Roxy tries to prove it by disappearing her book with some tech she has. Jane's computer explodes and Godcat saves her again. Roxy has a poster for the movie Complacency of the Learned, indicating Rose managed to publish her wizard stories at some point. Roxy also has a familiar-looking cat named Friglish. Dream Roxy sleepwalks into dream bubbles. Roxy likes Dirk, but he's gay. To her horror, when Roxy purifies Jane's book, it lands on Friglish, killing him. We see Dirk's interests in Learn Dave's comics were successful in this timeline. Dirk has robots he engages in rap battles. HB tries to assassinate Dream Dirk, but HB gets killed instead. Dirk seems to argue with his own AR, and both hide behind layers of irony in doing so. Both act as Jane's server player, installing Spurb machines to get Jane into the game. UU is jealous as her brother, who is going to play with her, has been difficult, and UU is outed as a fangirl historian of humanity. Roxy warns Jake that Dirk is going to make a move on Jake, while Jake duels Dirkbot. Dream Dirk, meanwhile, puts HB's head on a pike for the Dursites to see, and we see the new ruler of Durs, the Condess, now gifted with the powers of Lord English. Jake confronts Jane and asks her out, but Jane panics and declines despite desperately wanting him. It's painful to watch. Jake apologizes and implies he'll take Dirk's offer instead. Dream Jane seems to have been resurrected, and Jack tries to kill her again. WQ intervenes and clocks him. Roxy goes to a Skynet lab where she has cloned many mutant kittens and sends Friglish back from where she purified him to the original timeline as Jasper's the dead cat. Yu Yu's brother tells Dirk he loves games and wants to kill them all. He's terrible. Meanwhile, Dirk, AR, and Lil Seb help Jane do everything to get in the game, but they forget to prototype the sprite! There is no meteor, only the Condes's spaceship with the Trident logo. Years in the future, she's colonized the world. Dirk and Roxy are besieged by Crocker droids in their mid-sea homes. The Batter Witch was real all along, and she's bringing troll fascism to Earth. Act 6, Intermission 2. We see that Hussey has rescued a few folks from the Trolls universe, including a Carapacian named Miss Paint, a Centaur Lucis, and Spade Slick, and he had to make Slick a cyborg to save him from his injuries. However, Lord English comes knocking. Meanwhile, Karka is spending the meteor trip arguing with himself in memos and wondering why Terezi is spending more time with Dave and the mayor, who was healed by a dead alternate god-tier Pfeffery. Rose explains to the others that the new session is even worse off than theirs, as all of the players fail to prototype their sprites before entering the game, making it a dead session. She also explains how the Guardians and players are swapped around. Dave and Karkat fight over spending time with Terezi. John tries to play a Ghostbusters MMO with some of the residents of the Prospidian battleship, but he's not taking the isolation well. In a dream, John visits a dream bubble and speaks with a new troll, Mina. Terezi meets another, Aranea, who tells her that they are the pre-scratch versions of the trolls from the session before the one they knew. Much like the humans swapped places with their guardians, the trolls swapped places with their ancestors. Meanwhile, Hussey hides Slick and tries to face English with a magic wand, but he doesn't believe. English guns him down, killing the author. Act 6, Act 3. Jane's planet is the land of Crypts and Helium, or Loka, and it's a graveyard. She solves some puzzles and reads some depressing salamander tombs. Her dad has wandered off somewhere, but when she returns home, she sees Gamzee in god-tier clothes with Aradia's time machine? He prototypes her sprite with Tavros's and Vriska's corpses, resurrecting them as Tavros Sprite. They immediately explode out of self-hatred. Tavros and Vriska decide to team up in the afterlife to be relevant again. We see a flashback where Dirk confides the truth to Jake, that he and Roxy are the last surviving humans in the future. Yu set up their chat clients to be temporally in lockstep. After the Condess arrives, she uses her tech and influence as a wealthy CEO to influence politics. Eventually she pulls strings and has the insane clown posse elected dual presidents of the United States, and Guy Fieri is made High Chaplain, who then conducts the Hilarocaust, killing billions of people. It seems the Condess ruled Alternia into the ground, then Earth, and now Durs. The Condess also killed Jake's grandma, who tried to warn people of her and English. Dave eventually killed ICP, and Rose killed Fieri. Jack is imprisoned on Prospit. Jake realizes he is in a dream bubble and has an imaginary version of Dirk in his head. Jake also meets Aranea, who is Vriska's ancestor. Meanwhile, Dee takes Jack's place and uses the Queen's ring, but with no prototypings, it just makes you invisible. And of course, the Red Miles. Yu vents to Jane about how her brother's threats to kill her seem to be becoming more serious. He makes Dirk draw extremely tepid porn, threatening to kill Yu if Dirk doesn't do it. Dirk does, but then he reveals that he already hired Jack of his bleak session to murder Yu's dream self. Literally the worst. Aranea, Mina, some humans, and some trolls meet up in a dream bubble, have a scuffle, and Aranea fills them all in on ancestors and dancestors. Jake finishes the Robo-Bunny and names him Terry Kaiser, and he sends him to the original timeline, where the bunny is eventually renamed Liv Tyler and blown up in the green sun. The AR helps Jane but insists to be called Lil Hal from now on as he forges his own identity. By this point, the Red Miles start destroying the universe from Roxy's and Dirk's perspectives, while DD also uses Red Miles on Durs. Roxy starts the game as Jake's server player, and Yu clearly has complicated feelings for Roxy. Yu confides in Roxy her real name, Calliope, and says she's worried she's going to sleep and never wake up again. Working with her brother is not possible. We then see that Calliope is not a troll, but something new, a cherub. She has a magic wand and is chained to her room, which is on the troll meteor at some point in the far future, on a blighted Earth. We see Calliope's brother gleefully scribbling as he sees the Red Miles kill the humans. Aranea wakes up Dirk and Calliope goes to sleep. It's clear that she and her brother are one and the same, sharing a body. Dirk gets crap done. He starts his game, has a robot play it, flies through a plane, kisses an impaled Roxy to wake her dream self, and sends his decapitated head to Jake. Lil Hal tells Jake to kiss the head because everyone is dead. He does so, and Dirk wakes as his dream self. He kisses Jane, waking her. He then flies off with Dream Roxy and Jane to Jake's island just to watch Jake kiss his other head. One of Dave's robots enters the game for Dirk. Another enters for Roxy. The humans then enter at Jake's place. Yu's brother, Caliborn, then enters his game. Lord English leaves Hussey's dimension. Caliborn wakes up, and it's clear Calliope never will again. English enters a dream bubble on his time quest bed. Caliborn rips his leg off to escape his shackles and arms himself with an assault rifle. English uses his wand and unleashes a blast so powerful it double kills all of the ghosts in the afterlife of that dream bubble, even cracking the void. Caliborn plays Spurb alone. The two sprites prototype each other, making a black hole that sucks up the entire Earth. PM and Back Noir see that English can even hurt the horror terrors. Oh crap. Act 6, Intermission 3. Mia tries to recruit dead trolls to fight English, and we meet the other Dancestors. She is Pfeffery's Dancestor in an alternate version of the Condess. Cankry is Karkat's Dancestor, and he's an advocate of almost every possible social issue. Latula is Terezi's Dancestor, and she's a rad gamer girl. Horum is Kanaya's ancestor, and she's a sex-positive feminist. Meanwhile, John realizes Con Air is terrible, and Jade and Dave Sprite date and break up. Cronus is Eridan's Dancestor, and he's a creep who assaults people. Matuna is Solix's Dancestor, and he's brain damaged? Mulin is Nepida's Dancestor, and Kurlos is Gamzee's Dancestor. Mulin and Kurlos are assisting Gamzee, who seeks to assist English and make his mirthful messiahs real. Terezi is hate dating Gamzee, and Karkat is the only troll to sign up with Mita. John sees Tavros and Vriska in a dream where Vriska says she dated and broke up with an alternate John. Vriska explains how English's cracks have made the void navigable, and she wants to navigate to find some lost weapon in the void to defeat him. Rufio is Tavros' Dancestor, and he's Tavros' imaginary friend incarnate. Horus is Equius' Dancestor, and he's weird. Damara is Aradia's Dancestor, and she's vindictive and spiteful. Rose starts abusing alcohol and dating Kanaya, who is herself trying to understand her vampire powers. Mina and Vriska try to have a duel, but hundreds of dead alternate trolls try to join the fight. Act 6, Act 4. Jake's planet is the land of mounds in Xenon, Lomax. The underlings are undead, and the only moving things there. Roxy's planet is the land of pyramids in Neon, Lopan. They've clearly been in the game for a while, with limited alchemy. Dirk's planet is the land of tombs in Xenon, Lotak. Act 6, Intermission 4. Caliborn walks the blighted landscape. Roxy tries to reach Calliope, but there is no answer. Crying again. Gamzee offers to guide Caliborn on his quest, but Caliborn pumps a magazine into him. We see how resilient Gamzee is if he can survive even that. Caliborn speaks to the narrator, who is still Hussey, via terminal, who tells Caliborn that his quest will be extremely punishing because of his heinous actions. Act 6, Act 5. Gamzee has sabotaged all of their sprites. Jake's sprite is a combination of Eridan and Solix called Aerosol Sprite, and he hates himself. Jake and Dirk date and break up. Roxy's sprite is a combination of Pfeffery and Nepeta called Pfeffida Sprite, and she never speaks. They've been in this session for a year, and Roxy has made efforts to sober from her drinking problem. Roxy is captured by the Condess, who tries to force her to create a matriorb with her void powers. Dirk argues with and threatens to kill Lil Hal out of self-loathing, but agrees to give him a body. Thanks to Gamzee, Dirk's sprite becomes a combination of Equius and Lil Hal called Arqueus Sprite, who actually loves how smart and strong he is. Caliborn retrieves Lil Cal and Lil Sebastian from where Dirk dropped them in the ocean. Jane alchemizes Calliope and Caliborn's special Juju lollipops, which, when combined, make her go trickster mode. She infects the other players, brings plant life to Lokal, and alchemizes some legendary weapons. Pfeffer Sprite blows up. Dad is shown to be in a Durst prison. The players all wake up on their quest beds within Prospit's and Durst's moons, and they try to hash out their feelings. CD sends the Lil Cal from the Troll's meteor to Jack in prison, and Caliborn stares into it, pouring his soul through the two alternate versions of Lil Cal, and suddenly, this Jack is gifted English's powers. Weird. The Condesce uses these powers to destroy Durst's moon, while Jack does the same thing with Prospit's moon. The players go God tier. Jane is the Maid of Life, Jake is the Page of Hope, Roxy is the Rogue of Void, Dirk is the Prince of Heart. The Prospitian ship finally arrives. Jade intervenes, zapping Jack English far away. However, the Condesce uses her mind control powers to enslave Jade, turning her Grimbark. She also uses Jane's tiara top to mind control her as well. Jane zaps Dirk far away, and Jane threatens to assault Jake. Act 6, Intermission 5. The Troll meteor is about to arrive, and they are in complete disarray. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 1. Caliborn makes progress in his difficult quest, sinking pool ball planets. Also, the sprites explore the human session. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 2. Caliborn makes more progress, winning leprechaun companions with near-useless time powers. John sees that Vriska and Arnea's search for the Void's treasure has been making progress. They've been mind-controlling dead trolls as bait for Lord English to map the Void. Arnea explains how Gamzee raised Calliope and Caliborn. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 3. Arnea tells the others about the Rings of Life and Void. Apparently the unprototyped rings can resurrect and turn invisible in lieu of their normal effects. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 4. Hussey antagonizes Vriska, but they find the treasure. John sticks an arm through it and gains retcon powers, disappearing to other places in the comic. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 5. Slick finds Dai's voodoo doll and uses it to jump to a timeline where the Felts survived. He takes them, declaring himself their new leader and the survivors of Lord English's visit, and goes out of a secret exit towards the human session. John jumps randomly throughout time and space. Act 6, Intermission 5, Intermission 6. John and the Troll Meteor enter the human session. Jade teleports everyone off the meteor. Act 6, Act 1. Having hijacked the narration and ascended to the Lord of Time, Caliborn mocks Homestuck and inserts the third disc with stardust in the cartridge. Act 6, Intermission 1. Jade makes Roxy keep trying to make the Matriarch by stealing the nothingness from the lack of having one. Dave talks about how he has given up time travel as it only makes problems, and Jade repairs the Cowled sword. Jane demonstrates she can resurrect anyone once by killing and reviving Karkat. Jade rides the meteor into Skya, redirecting it to crash into the flooded Earth. Terezi took Arnea's offer to heal her blindness and regrets it. Roxy sees John and crushes on him. Act 6, Act 2. Caliborn mocks Homestuck more, and John briefly appears in his small artificial world. Act 6, Intermission 2. Jane builds up the houses. Arnea, desperately wishing to fix the plot, mind controls Gamzee and has him steal the Ring of Life for her. She puts it on, resurrecting within the human session. Even alive, she mind controls many Damaras to use their telekinesis for herself. She sets off Jake's explosive hope powers. Jade swaps Durst and Lofaf while trying to get Jake to stop. The fight creates a lava-filled crater on Lofaf. Arnea smashes Jake's house on top of Jade, killing her, and it is just... Imaginary Dirk appears to help Jake, but Jake's hope makes him real. PM and Bec Noir snatch Jade's corpse in blind rage, and Jane tells Dave she will revive her if he can get the body back. Jane manages to get Jake to stop, stopping him and Dirk. Arnea then puts Jane to sleep, but the Tiara Top keeps her going? Gamzee then starts beating the crap out of Terezi. The Condesce arrives to the battle. Act 6, Act 3. Caliborn tries to draw manga and reveals that he has seen his future and what he becomes. John appears with his retcon powers and recognizes Caliborn as the young Lord English. Game over. Act 6, Intermission 3. The bloodiest fight in all of Homestuck. Karkat tries to save Terezi, and Gamzee murders him, throwing him into the lava. Aranea tries to kill Jane, but Jake sacrifices himself instead. Dave fights PM and Bec Noir alone. Aranea impales Jane too. John and Caliborn fight. Kanaya finally chainsaws Gamzee in half. The Condess lasers Kanaya and Ash. PM and Bec Noir kill Dave. It is heroic. Jane and Jake are just and heroic respectively. Aranea uses telekinesis to throw entire planets at the Condess, who responds in kind. Rose attacks the Condess, who impales her. Aranea makes Terezi stab herself. Roxy tries to save Rose. John beats the crap out of Caliborn, something he surprisingly did not see coming. The Condess strangles Aranea and removes her ring. It is just. John and Dirk observe the destroyed session. They have failed. This one was tough. Act 6, Act 4. Caliborn monologues about being the most oppressed author ever. And strangely, he manages to improve his art in a roundabout way. He tells us that he's running a Kickstarter that he is funding with his own cryptocurrency and asks us to invest. Act 6, Intermission 4. Roxy speaks to Rose as she dies. It is heroic. Terezi tries to use her mind powers to figure out what they should do, but it doesn't work. In a dream bubble, a Jade tells a dead Calliope about how she comes from an alternate timeline where Lowas suddenly blew up during the 3-year trip, killing both John and Dave's sprite. Meanwhile, John decides to visit his denizen on Lowas for advice. The denizen, Typheus, makes John solve a puzzle with an oil flood, and John solves it by using his retcon powers to distribute it throughout the comic. With the oil free, he's able to use his wind powers to play the organs through the planet, finally doing his personal quest, clearing Lowas' sky, and purging the game cartridge of the stardust. John tries to practice his retcon powers, and jumps to when Terezi tried to use her powers. Meanwhile, Vriska and Mina gave up on their mission when John disappeared with retcon powers. They're dating at the Dark Carnival in a dream bubble, and Vriska is trying to be more carefree like Mina. Terezi identifies exactly what John should change in the comic, and writes it down for him, and then she dies. John takes the Ring of Life before Aranea can get it, and he alters the events leading up to Terezi killing Vriska back in Act 5. Roxy takes Bro's sword and buries Rose on Lowas before reuniting with Jasper Sprite. When John retcons the timeline in Act 5, Terezi catches Gamzee and ties him up. When Terezi was going to kill Vriska, John shows up and knocks her out instead. John retcons himself, Roxy, and the entirety of Lowas to jump to the new timeline he just made. When Grimbark Jane tries to hijack the meteor, Vriska is still around and puts her to sleep. Act 6, Act 5. Caliborn has made his masterpiece, a claymation diorama of his future before he goes to meet it. In it, he has the treasure, as well as English's rainbow pool ball magic powers and the Ring of Void. Suddenly, 8 god-tier humans retcon into his timeline to fight him. Caliborn uses his treasure, which absorbs and traps John, Rose, Dave, and Jade. The remaining 4 fight Caliborn, Gamzee, and Lil Seb. Gamzee is sliced in half, but Caliborn beats the humans. Jake does a hope explosion, and suddenly, Aarquia Sprite holds Caliborn down so Dirk can get a clean shot. Dirk uses his heart powers to suck their souls and put them in the nearest vessel, Lil Cal. Aarquia Sprite and half of Gamzee get sucked into it with Caliborn. Lil Cal was the most important character in Homestuck the whole time. Lord English was watching them all along. Lil Cal becomes Dog Scratch, who becomes Lord English. Don't make fun of me, I'm into this. Act 6, Intermission 5. We see the retconned events of the meteor trip and how Vriska's presence changes everything. Gamzee is on a leash. Terezi dates Vriska instead of Gamzee, Dave, or Karkat. Vriska forces Rose to quit alcohol. Dave and Karkat become incredibly close without a girl to fight over. The Dancestors meet the group of trolls, and Kurlos is disappointed in this Gamzee. Vriska sees her other self and brings back Tavros as Tavros Sprite as a sort of apology. We then see most of the cast on the victory platform in the human session, not destroyed this time. They mingle, and we get to see so many interesting interactions between far-flung characters. Lowas arrives with John, Roxy, and a bunch of sprites from the previous timeline. Jasper Sprite prototypes Roxy's sprite with Rose's corpse, making Rose Sprite, even though this timeline's Rose is still alive. Eventually, Vriska starts drawing up a battle plan. She states how the sprites are supposed to be backup lives, and they need to be ready to fight 3 Jacks: Spade Slick, Beck Noir, and Jack English. They assign teams to fight the Jacks, as well as the Condes and healing duties. Vriska also shows that she capture-logged the Earth for safekeeping. Vriska then leaves them to do it themselves, vanishing through a plane into the void. Aarquia Sprite hacks Jane's tiara top off, but when Jasper Sprite gives Rose Sprite a hug, they prototype combine and become just Rose Sprite squared, much to Rose's embarrassment. Jade explained in a dream bubble to Calliope about how she sought out her denizen, Echidna, for advice in the coming fight. An alternate dead god-tier version of Calliope comes from a timeline where she beats Caliborn, and she consoles this Calliope, telling her to enjoy her life. Roxy gives her the Ring of Life, and Calliope comes back to life. Kanaya knocks out Karkat to ensure he survives the battle. Roxy finally manages to recreate the Matriorb, and Kanaya cries with joy. Dirk confides in Dave that he has abusive tendencies and is ashamed of his alternate selves. They hug. Vriska confronts her other self with Mina in a dream bubble, viciously bullying her dead self for moving on. She takes her girlfriend Mina with her. She hasn't changed! Jane meets Nana Sprite, except there's 2 of them now. Jespro Sprite squared prototypes Jake Sprite with Nepida's head, finally bringing her back as Nepida Sprite. Vriska calls Jake and tells him to prototype Tavros Sprite with Godcat to eliminate that threat, turning them into G-Catavros Sprite, who is allergic to himself. Meanwhile, Vriska and Mina find out that Tavros from the original timeline has been busy recruiting an entire ghost army to fight Lord English. Yeah, Tavros. Dave Sprite and Nepida Sprite shake hands, accidentally becoming Dave Epida Sprite squared, but they feel like the 2 halves complement each other well. Aarquia Sprite finishes building up the players' homes, seeding the battlefield when he reunites with his brother Moirail, Dave Epida Sprite squared. Terezi leaves to find Vriska and bring her back, but she uses her mind powers to remember what happened in the old timeline. We see what became of a lot of the dead characters, and the dead Terezi and Vriska reunite as the void cracks all around them. They love each other. The Jacks arrive in the session, and Slick sicks the felt on Jake. Karkat, asleep, appears in the dream bubble with the ghost army. Alternate Calliope heads into the green sun. David the Sprite squared kisses Jade goodbye. Act 6, Act 6, Act 6, collide. Karkat makes the first strike, and Lord English blasts him awake. John, Rose, Roxy, and Kanaya fight the Condes with all of the powers they have. Jake fights the felt by himself, while Aarquia Sprite fights Cans with a fridge binding Gamzee. Karkat starts trying to fight Clover. Crowbar kills Jake and the Condes kills Rose, but Jane revives both of them while Jespro Sprite squared and the Nana Sprites heal. Spade Slick and Jack English fight each other, as well as Dave, Dirk, and Terezi. Slick kills Dirk, but Dave and Terezi jump to a timeline where he doesn't. Dad breaks out of the prison and joins Aarquia Sprite in the fight against Cans. Caliborn slays his denizen Yaldabaoth. The Ghost Army charges at Lord English and begins massacring them. Mina, Aradia, and Tavros try to fight him to no avail, but then David the Sprite Squared shows up and uses Undertale powers on him. Still doesn't work. Things look bleak. The contest strangles Jane unconscious. We learn that the Homestuck logo symbolizes the main 4 humans working as a team. The Condes and Jax beat the heroes down. But then, Dad, Jake, and Karkat defeat the Felt! Jack English holds Dirk in a headlock, and Slick holds him in a headlock. Jade intervenes in the fight between PM and Bec Noir to make them stop fighting, but PM tires of her shenanigans and knocks her out. Dirk signals Dave to take the shot, and Dave decapitates all three of them, 2 Jacks and Dirk. Jack English's head explodes into a black hole that takes half of Lothak and Gamzee with it. PM slices off Bec Noir's ringed arm, finally defeating that genocidal butthole, and Roxy impales the Condess, killing the vicious Batter Witch. The Jack that PM defeated survives. The heroes regroup, victorious. Act 7. Alternate Calliope conducts the finale. The Mayor and PM burn the rings in a volcano, which spews out the Genesis tadpole towards Skya and into the battlefield. Alternate Calliope does one spell, turning the green sun into a black hole, while the Genesis frog grows and hatches, birthing a new universe. Lord English still stands as the black hole devours everything, but Vriska unleashes the treasure upon him, with the symbols of John, Rose, Dave, and Jade. Caliborn uses his crowbar to break his god-tier clock, not content to even be conditionally mortal. The heroes see an exit from Spurb. Jade holds the earth and see what it will become. The seas recede, nature returns, the mayor founds Cantown! The heroes live there, and an artificial reward sun says, "Thanks for playing." While Caliborn turns back in time to become immortal, the heroes leave the game behind. So many feelings. Credits. The heroes call the planet Earth-C and help rebuild society. They clone hundreds of human, troll, and Carapacian babies to repopulate, and then Dave skips them forward 5,000 years. Earth-C rejoices upon the creator's return. John and Jane are coronated king and queen of the human kingdom. Dad and Banana Sprites join. Dave, Jay, Terezi, and Karkat are coronated kings and queens of the Troll Kingdom. Rose, Roxy, Kanai, and Calliope are coronated queens of the Carapace Kingdom. Jake and Dirk are coronated kings of the Consort Kingdom. G. Catavro Sprite joins. Years pass, and Rose and Kanaya get married! Terezi still can't find Vriska as every ghost falls into the black hole. Jane becomes a mayor and CEO of a new Crocker Corp, while Jake becomes CEO of a new Skyanet and a model. Rose and Kanaya tend to baby trolls and mother grubs. Jake and Dirk date again. Roxy and Calliope are close. John becomes reclusive and misses his dad. Caliborn and Gamzee try to troll him from the past, but John smashes his phone to be done with them. We see that, on the day of Jane officially becoming CEO of Crocker Corp, one of her refurbished Crocker Corp teleporters is hacked. We then see a flashback where the one surviving Jack became the new leader of the Felt. They try to rebuild the Felt Manor on Lofaf, but then Finn sees the players are all about to leave the game. They follow. Back in the present, a Carapacian committee of the Creator Simultaneity Jubilee organization are about to begin their Somniformation plan as a surprise to the creators to landscape Earth-C's moon into a permanent crescent shape. Jack, having traveled forward to the present, hacked Jane's teleporter to take her to the moon facility right before it's demolished. Jane makes Jack crash onto the moon right before the defense shroud is erected around the moon. Jane uses Crocker Corp tech to brainwash Jack and forcefully hires the Felt to work for her. She and the Felt get into Biscuit's oven except for Cans, who she makes punch them into next week. Cans alone is killed in the Somniformation. Epilogues. John awakes on his 23rd birthday, but he finds out that Rose has been hiding an illness as she is suffering debilitating visions and headaches. We learn that the Green Sun's erasure has nullified First Guardian's powers from here on out. Rose explains the concept of Canon to John, and how she realizes they never got around to truly defeating Lord English. There's a plot hole. She asks John to retcon back to ensure that the canon of Homestuck is completed, protected, and consistent. If John doesn't, Earth-C will become irrelevant and nonsensical. She gives him a set of instructions of what to do. John then has a picnic with Roxy and Calliope, who are questionably together. Also, Calliope is non-binary now. John isn't sure whether to do as Rose asks, but they say they'll support him either way. Calliope offers John's pick of meat or candy. Candy. In this timeline, John eats the candy and decides to do what he wants. Stay on Earth-C and maybe be less reclusive. Calliope asks that John instead use his retcon powers to bring back their parental figure, Gamzee. John jumps back in time and rescues Gamzee from the fridge and brings him back, and Gamzee promises to turn over a new leaf and have a literal redemption arc. The moment this happens, Dirk calls Jane and tells her to cancel her campaign to be president of Earthsea. Rose suddenly feels better, and Kanaya feels like she has finally returned to her. Rose and Kanaya tend to the brooding caverns, where they talk about how certain political parties are threatened, allowing trolls to naturally reproduce like they used to. One of the grubs is a near biological clone of Vriska, and they decide to adopt her. Meanwhile, Dave and Karkat are dating, while Jade is promiscuous and professes free love. John begins dating Roxy. Jane, upset about her shafted career in politics, date rapes Jake. Dirk purposefully hangs himself in the Cantown steeple. The narration says that, when you think so little of yourself, of course your death would be just, and he dies. There's an enormous funeral, but when John tries to use his retcon powers to change things, they don't work anymore. Time passes and John marries Roxy, though John checks in with Terezi occasionally to see how her search for Vriska is going. Jane, Jake, and Gamzee are a triad, and Dave, Jade, and Karkat are another triad. John and Roxy have a baby that they name after Harry Anderson, and Jane and Jake have a child named after Tavros. Suddenly, an impaled but younger alternate Jade plummets from the sky, confusing everyone. They give her a funeral, but then Aradia and Solix arrive. The alternate Jade wakes up as a puppeted avatar for alternate Calliope, who still exists somewhere out in the void. Years later, ghosts from the afterlife falling down to Earthsea becomes a regular thing, creating a new class of citizen. Jane leverages her position as a powerful CEO to influence anti-troll politics that seeks to limit troll reproduction, and Karkat disappears to engage in a troll resistance. Dave and Jade weren't willing to follow him. The Earthsea government becomes human-dominated and starts sending skyships to patrol the Troll Kingdom. John becomes convinced that Tavros is being abused by Jane or Gamzee, and he tries to kidnap him to save him, though he fails in front of Jane. John clings to his correspondence with Terezi, indicating things aren't fine with Roxy. Karkat is the leader of the troll resistance, with Rose and Kanaya aiding him. Mina arrives with a stolen ring of life, and Karkat doms her into enlisting. They begin dating. 10 years later, Harry Anderson and Vriska begin dating. Aradia, Solix, and alternate Calliope watch the world from afar. Roxy leaves John, and Dave and Jade marry. Karkat comes to the wedding but leaves early. Human supremacy becomes popular, and trolls unofficially become second-class citizens. In response, the Troll Rebellion declares war. Meanwhile, Gamzee is a pope-like figure, preaching about redemption and supporting humanity. In an attempted assassination of the Earthsea president, Jane's dad sacrifices himself to save him and is incinerated. Jane takes it poorly and begins personally handling the warfare on behalf of the government. She even kicks Gamzee off the ship, as she will no longer tolerate any trolls, no matter how loyal. She also makes Jake run TV shows where troll leaders are executed. The original Vriska finally falls from the sky. Vriska finds Gamzee, and they have hate sex, though Vriska kills him afterwards. Rose and Kanaya's child, Vriska, who starts going by Vrissy, meets the original Vriska. Jake escapes from Jane with Tavros and asks to stay with John. John tries to make amends with Roxy so he can be a better father to Harry Anderson. Jade and Dave finally join the Troll Resistance, as the Earthsea government has become more of a dictatorship under Jane, with the president being just a figurehead. Dave finds the ruins of the old United States White House, where he finds a hologram of Barack Obama. Apparently, Obama played Spurb and became a God-tier Hope player at some point, and he says he knew Dave would eventually find him. He helps Dave realize his ultimate self, combining every iteration's memory and powers into one consciousness. Obama provides a robot, DaveBot, to house his consciousness so he doesn't get sick like Rose had experienced. Alternate Calliope explains how this entire timeline is contained within the black hole, an alternate timeline preserved to exist outside of canon, outside of the destructive power of some other figure. Lord English's body falls to Earthsea, and alternate Calliope consumes it with this Jade's body. She, Aradia, and DaveBot leave through the vortex to a more relevant timeline, but Solix stays behind. Jade never knows what became of Dave. Meat. In this timeline, John eats the meat and decides to do what's right, ensure Lord English is stopped for good. He says goodbye to his friends. Dave tells Karkat that Jane intends to turn Earthsea into a neoliberal capitalist state, and he convinces Karkat to run against her. Dirk advises Jane on the election, encouraging her political ambitions. John follows Rose's instructions, first taking the Ring of Life from Aranea when she had acquired it in a previous timeline. John then grabs the humans from the Game Over timeline to assist in the fight against English. Meanwhile, Dirk tells Rose that he has already ascended to his ultimate self and that he can help her. John retcons him and his friends to confront Caliborn, but Caliborn uses the treasure which absorbs John, Rose, Dave, and Jade. They are trapped for an indeterminate time until Vriska deploys the treasure in the fight against English, but Vriska's knocked out by a shard of the void and falls into the black hole. Lord English is killing armies of ghosts, and Rose, Dave, and Jade all die in the fight. Dave Ebida's Sprite Square lands a killing blow, falling into the black hole. John, however, is wounded with a poison-lined tooth. Ultimate Dirk then reveals himself as the narrator, and he writes that Rose accepts his offer to join him? Roxy also becomes non-binary, and Dirk says he's fine with that? Dave and Karkat know they have the support of Jade and Kanaya. John wanders the void and finds Mina, who steals the Ring of Life and leaves. Rose begins to ascend to her ultimate self, witnessing the events of Homestuck and the Candy Epilogue. Alternate Calliope, or Ultimate Calliope, hijacks the narrative to say that the younger, dead Jade falls into the black hole. Then, in the Meat timeline, she possesses adult Jade to be her avatar, relegating Dirk's voice to the background. Meanwhile, John finds Terezi in the void. Dave and Karkat try to convince Jake to support their campaign instead of Jane's, and he seems willing but conflicted. John and Terezi have hate sex in the back of Dad's car in the void. Roxy asks advice from Dave regarding gender and sexuality. Suddenly, Dirk shoots Jade with a tranquilizer rifle and hijacks the narrative once more. Jake is about to give his political speech in support of Karkat and equality, but then Dirk just writes that he craps himself in front of everyone, ruining it. F you, Dirk. John zaps Terezi to Earthsea, but he dies shortly after from his wounds. After Jake's humiliation, Jane sweeps the election and becomes president. Terezi recognizes Ultimate Dirk, who invites her to join him, promising he might find a way to bring John back. Dirk takes Rose and Terezi on his ship as he prepares to leave Earthsea, but Kanaya is furious. Dirk writes that Kanaya talks to Rose and just lets her go. Kanaya doesn't understand why she does this, and she will forever regret this. Jake asks to come with Dirk, but Dirk says his place is to become the eternal sex slave to Jane's empire on Earthsea before he takes off in one of Jake's spaceships. Roxy, Kanaya, and Jade realize that Dirk has been manipulating them, but it's too late. Dirk gives a speech about how the only way for Homestuck to continue and never die is for him to take the mantle as the new villain. Ultimate Calliope possesses Jade again and assures the others that she will oppose Dirk and chase after him. Dirk offers a robot, Rosebot, to house Ultimate Rose's consciousness. Homestuck Squared. Ultimate Dirk embraces his role as the villain of a new era of Homestuck. Dirk brings back the suggestion box, but the only suggestion from the audience is to stop making Homestuck. Dirk then removes the suggestion box. Terezi lands the spaceship on a new planet somewhere else in the universe. In the Candy timeline, the imaginary Dirk ominously reappears in Jake's mind and convinces him to get back with Jane, but as a spy. He does so, but Jane thinks the Troll Rebellion kidnapped Tavros. Vrissy calls Tavros to help her and Vriska dispose of Gamzee's body, and Tavros has an emotionally cathartic reaction at seeing his abuser dead. They coordinate with Harry to dispose of the body in a school because Harry thinks it's a prank. They obviously get caught and Gamzee's death becomes global news. In the Meat timeline, we see a flashback to Jane's inauguration as president. This Jake also has a re-emerged imaginary Dirk. During the inauguration, Jasper Sprite Squared makes a reappearance, kidnaps Jane, and claims that she would be Queen of the Carapace Kingdom, refusing to acknowledge Jane's rule. Many Carapacians welcome this news. Vice President Ataxia, Jane's token troll, tries to calm the press. Jasper Sprite Squared says Jane is unfit to rule and says she will teach her how to rule. However, her idea of doing that is taking Jane, Jake, a troll named Swifer, Swifer's assistants, and a monarchist Carapacian through one of her magical fenestrated planes, back to the city Slick constructed on the ruins of Alternia to loosen up and have fun. Jane's dad follows, looking for her, and meets an alternate version of DD. He hires DD to help him and Jane, but Snowman and Slick both intervene at this unexpected partnership. We presume Dad eventually finds Jane and the others and makes them return to Earthsea. Meanwhile, a group of heroes pursue Dirk through space in their own spaceship. Ultimate Calliope is helpful but socially inept, and Kanaya vows to save her wife. Roxy is a trans man now. Dirk, Rosebot, and Terezi settle on the new planet, Deltritus, which is hospitable to life. Dirk explains he plans to have a new game of Spurb to spur the plot forward, and he challenges Rosebot to a contest to develop the better life form to play it. Dirk's first attempt is horrid and pitiful, and so Rosebot accepts. During one of Rosebot's breaks, Terezi tries to tell her about Dirk's influence, but then they start having hate-love feelings. Dirk intervenes and cuts that short. Meanwhile, Jade and Ultimate Calliope argue about the control of Jade's body and negotiate an agreement. In the Candy timeline, Vrissy, Vriska, Tavros, and Harry hide in Harry's bedroom when Karkat calls John to talk about Gamzee's death and the Troll Revolution. Meanwhile, Jane plots to make the trolls pay for Gamzee's death, thinking that they corrupted Tavros. John tells Harry that he's proud of their involvement. Vriska speaks to reporters and is then attacked by Jane's secret police, prompting Vriska to fight her way out. John, Rose, Kanaya, Jade, Vrissy, Vriska, Tavros, and Harry meet up in a secluded spot, and Jade and Rose reveal that they had a secret child. Apparently, merging with Beckroll made Jade intersex, and she can't bear kids. She did, however, have a kid with Rose in secret that Rose bequeathed to her named Yiffany, who was just kidnapped by Jane in retaliation. We see Jane torturing Yiffy, claiming that she knew about her, and saying that she won't keep it secret any longer. In the Meat timeline, Dirk contacts Hussy for advice and answers, but Hussy is elusive. Dirk demands to know why Yiffy exists in the other timeline, claiming that her conception is dumb and will draw ire from the wokeness police? Hussy tells Dirk off and says that Dirk's just scared of her. Meanwhile, Terezi encounters the many horrifying creatures that Dirk and Rosebot have been making. Davebot, Aradia, and Alternate Jade are in a spaceship of their own, and Ultimate Calliope, through Alternate Jade, tells Davebot the situation. Aradia reveals that she has spent hundreds of years in alternate timelines, confirming that god tiers indeed never age past their prime. Dave talks to Karkat about how he's scared and glad he didn't lose him like Kanaya lost Rose. In the Candy timeline, we see a flashback to the incident with Gamzee's corpse at the school. 3 human students witness it: Silas, Avril, and Amode. A teacher comes to them and tells them they are an undercover agent for the Troll Rebellion, and asks them to do a mission for them instead of going to the authorities. They're glad to help. Meanwhile, while Jane gives a eulogy at Gamzee's funeral, Jake lets Yiffany go, but Yiffany interrupts the funeral. Jane tries to shock her to death in front of everyone, but Yiffany defiles the ceremony and briefly escapes. John tries making a convoluted plan to save everyone, excited to be a hero again. Rose, Kanaya, and Jade attack the funeral and proclaim an offer to trade Tavros for Yiffany. Jane refuses, much to Jake's anguish. Vriska and Vrissy get captured. Knowing John's involvement, Jane orders the bombing of John's home. John just sits there and watches his entire life, his only possessions from his dad, burn in the fire. Karkat consoles John and tells him it's about time he joined the revolution. He also rants about Dave's disappearance, but John tells him that Dave's body was found near the ruins of the White House, dead. Karkat is in disbelief that he didn't even say goodbye. In the Meat timeline, Kanaya, Jane, and Roxy are uncomfortable by Dave and Karkat kissing all the time. The non-Ultimate Calliope is also here, hiding in the vents out of fear for their godly other self. In the Candy timeline, Roxy invites John into her secret lair where Calliope has been constructing a device that could use the black hole to tap into canonity. They call it the plot point, and they tell John they need the most plot-relevant character they can find to make use of it. They ask John to rescue Vriska. And that's it. Homestuck Squared just ends there. Well, okay, not exactly. See, yes, this is where the original team of Homestuck Squared quit production. See my other video for why. But in the more than a year I've been working on this video, against all odds, Homestuck has returned, under a new name, Homestuck Beyond Canon, or HSBC. Given the new authors, art styles, retcons, and sudden shift in the direction of the story, I think it's best to consider Beyond Canon effectively a new act, following up to Homestuck Squared. Think of it like a less extreme version of Berserk versus New Berserk, where the writing torch was passed on to new writers. My goal here was to recap all of Homestuck, and if you ask me, I succeeded. Beyond Canon is going its own way, and I wish them luck, but in its effort to distinguish itself from Homestuck Squared, to me, okay. It's a separate thing, a new era of Homestuck. So here concludes the recap proper. But you know I have to recap what's been made in Beyond Canon so far, right? Let's make it happen. Homestuck Beyond Canon. In the Meat timeline, Terezi roleplays a court drama with herself, changing her outfit. Dirk sends her a file for his latest creation, a satyr for her to judge in his contest against Rosebud. Terezi seems to be able to shut out his voice. In the Candy timeline, Solix tells John to figure himself out while he idly plays retro Earth games. Vriska helps Vrissy exercise her mind powers as they escape from a Crocker prison. Vriska and Jake see Jane giving a presentation on the intel they've gathered on the plot point, and Jake reports to Mina that she knows. Apparently Mina and Roxy really don't get along. John runs into Vriska, where she tells him that she doesn't consider this world canon. It seems fake to her. In the Meat timeline, Ultimate Calliope accidentally knocks young Jade's body out with Sleepy Tea, and briefly has an existential crisis of self. Aradia and Davebot discuss their mastery over temporal mechanics, and Aradia takes Davebot on an instantaneous alternate timeline excursion. In the Candy timeline, Harry Anderson and Vrissy reunite with Tavros and Yiffany aboard a rebellion ship, where Kanaya confronts Jade for having had sex with her wife. Rose invokes her seer powers to say she is confident Kanaya would eventually come to forgive her, and Jade pleads that Yiffany is the only thing in her life that gives her purpose. In the Meat timeline, Roxy and Calliope invite Jade and Kanaya to a secret meeting inside a special dream bubble of Calliope's own creation, where they show them a secret project they are working on, an artistic metaphysical representation of canonity in the form of a floral spurred logo grown without inhibition. The secrecy is futile, however, and Ultimate Calliope condemns them and their project for being a dubious mess, while projecting English-looking powers. Dirk explains that he is accelerating his Deltritus plans, while complaining about the previous writing of Homestuck Squared. Terezi has decided to use an automated system to adjudicate the contest, which disappoints Dirk. Rosebud is having second thoughts about the contest, even as Dirk makes accommodations like moving their base to a cliffside as Rosebud's species is aquatic. Dirk prepares to force her compliance when she acquiesces and thanks him for bringing her, making the coercion unnecessary, for now. In the Candy timeline, Mina and Karkat convene to enact a massive operation. Jane has sent her fleet to the Troll Meteor, the headquarters of the Revolution and the location of the plot point. And Karkat plans to take advantage of her overextending her forces as she approaches. He's also angry Dave won't be there to help. Meanwhile, Jane reveals to Jake that she had orchestrated the Carapacian Somna formation so that she'd have access to a laser death ray as a contingency. And the stress gets to her. She verbally abuses Jake for not being good enough, and she even guilts him for the crimes of Grandpa Jake. Jake snaps back at her, saying he was the best parent Tavros had. Gamzee had cured Tavros of his deadly peanut allergy through abusive exposure therapy, traumatizing both Tavros and Jake, who had to constantly EpiPen him, and Jane hadn't even noticed. Jane realizes she's been a bad mother, but justifies it on the grounds that Earthsea needed her guidance. And she says she forgives Jake for pushing Dirk to suicide? Jake is torn on whether to turn on Jane or not and consults Brain Ghost Dirk, but he realizes that Brain Ghost Dirk is just Jake himself, an imaginary friend. Jake realizes what he must do. Not all Janes are evil, but his is, and he must protect his son from her. Meanwhile, John brings Vriska back to the meteor and the plot point. Calliope shows the device to them, a reconfigured cherub portal that has identified the central point of the black hole that contains their dubiously canon world. They try to suggest ways Vriska might provoke a narrative response from it, but Vriska instead just tries to steal it. She's sucked into it, and Ultimate Calliope narrates how Vriska's foolishness has forced her intervention. Vriska wakes up within the plot point, a liminal space, dream bubble, and construct Ultimate Calliope has made just for her. And it turns out this is where the sprites have been hiding. It also turns out that apparently Devepita Sprite Squared survived the battle with Lord English, and Fefita Sprite apparently survived her own explosion. G Catavro Sprite, Aerosol Sprite, and the two Nana Sprites are also here. Only Jaspro Sprite Squared, Jasper Sprite, and the two Aarquia Sprites are missing. It seems that the sprites were hidden away by Ultimate Calliope to act as her agents before the timeline split. Devepita Sprite Squared says they are there to train Vriska. Vriska leaves her dream hive to find a Tavros, pre-disability, and the construct prompts her. Vriska figures out that she needs to learn a lesson from this place as a sort of dream quest and tries to speedrun it, saying whatever she needs to say to Tavros to pass the test or improve his life. When that fails, she tries to have him kill her, but it just resets the construct. She ends up spending a whole year failing this trial over and over, adjusting to life in the dream bubble with the sprites. Eventually, she gives up on trying to fix Tavros and just plays a game with him. And she learns the lesson that Tavros was never a project she needed to fix. Vriska is then faced with a Radiobot. A Radiobot judges her, and Vriska attempts to use her mind powers to make a Radiobot care about her before deciding against it. She learns the lesson that Aradia never wanted to be her friend, and that she needed to let her go. Aradia tells her that this place is meant to help Vriska grow up. Vriska genuinely apologizes to Tavros and Aradia and pledges to change for real this time. Vriska breezes through other figures of her past, like Eridan, John, and Kanaya, but she hits a wall with her guardian. She spends 3 more years in the point, unable to move on. She consults the sprites for advice, and the B1 Nana Sprite tells her that seeing Jane be a dictator in the Candy timeline has been unnerving, but also reassuring that her quaint life of raising a family may have been one of the more fulfilling lives she could have had. She had found her own path. This encourages Vriska to face her guardian once more, an amalgam of her idol ancestor Mindfang and her Lucis, Spider-Mom. Vriska relives the torment of her upbringing and how Spider-Mom never once cared about her well-being. But Vriska decides she's had enough. She learns the lesson that she never needed to please her Spider-Mom nor her ancestors, and she just walks away to choose her own path. G Catavro Sprite and Aerosol Sprite try to distract Vriska with video games before she goes to the next trial, but she doesn't heed their warning. It's Dog Scratch. He sees her only once, for the lesson is simple. Dog Scratch doesn't need to be alive to manipulate, pressure, and prey on Vriska. She carries that damage with her, and it won't ever go away. Meanwhile, Jaspro Sprite Squared calls Devepita Sprite Squared, where they update each other on their respective missions, Vriska's therapy, and Jaspro Sprite Squared's attempt to de-radicalize President Jane of the Meat timeline. Vriska eventually takes on her last trial, only to discover it's her. The dead version of her that moved on. She only asked for a hug, but Vriska just can't. Therapy's not done yet. Back in the Candy timeline, Jade erects a shield around the ship with the children in it to protect them, while she tries to convince Rose to give a crap about the people around her. Rose has suddenly become quite cynical and disregards Jade, needling her about her mistakes. The narration tells us that it's not just the Yiffany drama that has made Rose so cynical. She has foreseen her own death, shot in the head in the upcoming battle, putting her initially into a prolonged comatose state. She has come to accept this fate, believing, like Vriska, that this world is fake, and thinking that her wife Kanaya would be better off without her. Kanaya alone joins Mina and Karkat on the battlefield, where the three of them accept that no human gods will be joining the fight. Fine. Mina says it's a troll thing anyway. Jake joins Jane at the helm of her battleship, her finger next to the button. He kisses her, says goodbye, and shoots her in the back of the head. She survives! He prepares a second shot, but she deflects it, heals herself, and takes his gun. She beats him nearly to death with the gun, but relents, instead deciding that she can't trust anyone. She dumps every person off the ship, including all of her cloned Crocker police and Jake. Meanwhile, Yiffany and Tavros leave the safety of their ship to make a difference, and so Harry Anderson and Vrissy follow. Rose covers their eyes as a bullet goes through a god's head. But unlike her prediction, it's not Rose's head, it's Jade's. Jane, with nothing and nobody left, decides she has nothing to lose. She fires the death ray on the troll meteor. In the Meat timeline, Deltriton sends a message about this new game. And there we go. That's as far as it gets as of the making of this video. I know that cliffhanger might be annoying, but hey, what's new, right? Personally, I believe most of the main cast will survive the death ray. The confrontation between Jane and Jake tells me they aren't ready to off characters, at least yet, though maybe the battle will have a few high-profile casualties like Jade. Regardless, this recap of Homestuck is over, but I'll be keeping tabs on Beyond Canon as it develops. The HSBC team will continue to make content, and I wish them nothing but the best of luck. I'll defend the ending of the original Homestuck comic, but what's important to me is not so much how something ends, but the journey we had. And this was quite the journey. Thank you for watching.
Are you ready? It's time for the one, the only Game Bro! He's coming to your screen, straight from the magazine, the Mixmeister of Master Swords and Mushrooms. Are you sure you're ready for this? Well, come on, get ready, get set, and here we go. The Game Bro's here, and he's got the games. All you other lame brainers better feel ashamed. He can bend the rules, he's too cool for school, and he's got just a few cheat codes for you. There ain't nothing that'll ever hold this bad boy down. That hat that he's wearing is like his personal crown. He's got every game beat, his skills are that sweet, but if you want his crew, you gotta be elite. It's Game Bro! When you're out of corners, he's got your back. He never ever betray you, man, that's a fact. Yo, he's your best friend and never foe. So come on and let's go! games will never stop. The games will never stop. The games will never stop. The games will never